Hello. Tonight we are going to talk about decreasing problem behaviors. And my name is Lorraine Zanata. I'm one of the new behavior analysts on board at Boston Public Schools, so program director for ABA. The parent training series was started last month. And so each month we'll be going over a different topic. And this month we're going to be talking about decreasing problem behaviors. So basically, we want to know, let me change the slide here.
Sorry, I'll get it now.
That's okay. Why does he do that? That's like the big question that a lot of parents and teachers ask when we're talking about problem behavior. In applied behavior analysis, all behaviors are viewed as serving a function. So they have a purpose for this individual. Basically, they are to access something or to avoid or escape something. So understanding why a behavior occurs is pretty much the basic crux of our science and what we do. And we use an analysis of the behavior and the interaction with the environment to help us understand what's going on. So when we look at why is one of our kids engaging in a certain behavior, the answer is because it's working for him. That behavior is very functional, and it's become an effective way for him or her to get what they want or to stop something. And so when we talk about changing behavior, it's really about changing our behavior as parents and teachers and psychologists, behavior analysts, in order to change our children's behavior. So we have to change how we respond to that behavior in order to make an impact. And one more. Okay. So when we're doing that, we want to start out by looking at contingencies. And contingencies are pretty basic if-then statements that, again, we all are pretty much used to using. If you put your shoes on, then you get to go out. If you eat your vegetables, then you get your ice cream. So it's a way to present something that can help the child understand if you do this, you can gain access to something. It can also be used to clarify like an aversive event. So if you pick up the baby, then the baby stops crying. And then that makes us feel better because the baby crying is aversive to us. So contingencies can kind of work both ways. But we look at the contingency to help us understand what is actually maintaining the behavior. Click. I made some handouts as well that go with our training tonight, and so you have them there. We want to talk about first, when we're looking at problem behavior, it's very important to have a clear definition of what are we exactly talking about. And so we're going to do a little exercise as far as behavioral definitions. A behavioral definition is a statement that specifies exactly what the behavior is. Clearly what the child or adult is doing, and it's very important because when you have a team of people working together, everybody needs to be on the same page as far as what they're looking at. If we just have a vague idea of what a tantrum is, you might define a tantrum differently than I would define it. And when you go to taking data collection, if you're recording kind of stomping feet and whining as a tantrum, and I'm recording it as dropping to the ground and crying and thrashing and knocking things over, we're counting two different things. So we need to be very clear when looking at problem behavior as far as what we're looking at. So I made a list here of just some common target behaviors that are problems in behavior plans and kids that are having some difficulties. And so if you want, you can pick one or two that maybe you experience with at home, and we can kind of try and clearly define them. I also left some blanks for behaviors that are more unique. Do you need a pencil?
I'm all set. I just, even when I have a question about, I don't have a definition, in my head. Is it elopement?
Elopement? Elopement is basically leaving the area or running away. So kids can elope from classrooms or from their backyard or from the house.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna check that one off.
okay. So then we would want to define it specifically for this scenario, for this child, and see, is there a specific area that he elopes from, or what does it look like? Does he run away? Does he sneak away? Does he,
I'm out of here.
Oh, really? So there's a verbal statement, and then, okay. So in this case, then we would define elopement as, a verbal statement, I'm out of here, followed by leaving, storming out the door, or something like that. But you would want to be very clear when you define it, so that again, if he's, done playing with something, or maybe he doesn't want to do an activity and he just walks out of a room, someone doesn't mark that as elopement. We want to make sure that we're just clarifying it from other times that he would leave. So, anything else that he particularly does during that time?
Well, it's the whole body language. It's the
Not the typical word, it's
watermelon, really, it can it's the whole body language, not
Right.
nothing.
And then where does he go?
He just leaves.
He actually leaves the house, like he'll go out the front door, he just leaves the room?
No, not the house, but he'll leave the room.
Okay.
House. He knows not to leave the house. And if
Okay.
we're in an outside place together, he might go a distance,
Okay.
but still keeping it.
Okay. So that one might be termed more differently as maybe just like leaving the area. Elopement is typically considered someone who like really leaves like the building and is going to take off like down the block or something.
Right.
But again, it's good to clarify. So,
Right, so that-
this is like a beginning or a precursor to elopement. But he's protesting and he is leaving the area.
Yes.
So then we could just write that on the bottom, leaving area. Okay, any of these other ones that,
I would definitely say non-compliance.
okay,
So it's not so much as tantrum, it's just
refusal to comply
Right.
with instructions.
right.
Is there any instruction in particular or just generally across the board non-compliant?
Well, once something happens, then you want to do something else. Then and so in the classroom, and that's where my concern really is. In the classroom, then tasks might not be completed. Following through, following teams. If that occurs, then
Okay, so, we would want to then maybe talk to the teacher and find out for sure what non-compliance looks like in the classroom versus what it looks like at home. But it is important to clarify the behavior in the environment so that you have a really clear picture of what you're counting. Okay, so once you have really defined your behaviors and you know what you're going to target, we can start the analysis phase of understanding problem behavior. And the next sheet we have here is called our ABC analysis sheet. Hi.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No problem. You can just sign in and then take one of each sheet. The ABC analysis is pretty much what all behavior analysts use when we're starting an assessment. Our main goal is to find out the function of the problem behavior. Why is this individual doing this? What is the purpose for them? So when we do an ABC analysis, we have clearly defined our behaviors. We list them at the top of our data sheet here under the behavior section. I left that blank so that you can take a copy home and use it. The location, if it was in a classroom setting, typically I would have classroom, lunchroom, outside recess, or maybe hallway or transition time, so that we can kind of pinpoint if there's a specific area that there's a problem with. But if you're at home, you can put, home, backyard, car, or community settings that behaviors might occur more often in. Okay, so we look at the ABC data sheet here, and we want to know that the antecedent is anything that precedes the behavior in time. So basically, anything that occurs before the behavior. Behavior is anything that a person does. So we look at behavior as observable events, and not so much about like thoughts in someone's head. It needs to be something that I can see that someone's doing. And consequences are events that follow behavior in time. So when you look at these three contingencies together, any behavioral procedure that we use in behavior analysis is basically a modification to one part of this three-term contingency. So we either, when we have our data, then we can make changes on the antecedent side, and that will affect the behavior, or we can change consequences, and that will affect behavior. So it's important that we have a clear understanding about what the behavior is we're actually looking at, and then what behaviors or what events precede the behavior and what events follow the behavior. Sorry, can you change the slide again? And actually, I think we're one ahead, but if you want to leave it up a little.
No, can we go back to this one, or?
Nope, go forward. Yeah, right. That's it, antecedents.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
When you say behaviors or the events that came before and after the behavior, do you mean what the child has done, or do you mean in general what might have been going on?
In general.
Right.
So when we're talking about behaviors, we're talking about the child's behavior.
Okay.
And we have a sheet here that just lists some common problem behaviors. And before you came, we just did a small exercise about how to clearly define those behaviors so that everybody on the team is on the same page and we understand that aggression looks different for Joe than it does for Julian. So we want to, personalize the definition of these behaviors. Antecedents are anything that occurs before the behavior. So we're going to go over now what antecedents and consequences are. So antecedents are anything that precedes a behavior, and they can be verbal directives, instructions, a change in the environment, so the lights go off or there's a loud sound. The presence or absence of people coming in the room, people leaving the room can be antecedents. And in general, just a passage of time. Sometimes families report, oh, my child was sitting in the living room fine, and then all of a sudden I hear the screaming and they're biting themselves or they're banging their head. And we don't really know what happened. So sometimes just the passage of time can be an antecedent. As long as it's basically looking at what occurs immediately before the behavior. It's very clear that when we're training people on an ABC data sheet, that it's not something that happened 5 minutes before the behavior. We're talking like 3 to 5 seconds before. So whatever immediately happened before is what we want to look at. It has the most impact on the behavior. Okay, if you can change. Behavior. So again, to define behavior, it's anything a person does, but it needs to be observable. So it needs to be something that we can see. If someone is sitting there crying, we can track crying, but as far as identifying why, we might not know, because that could be going on inside their head, But other examples of behaviors, writing numbers is a behavior, hitting is a behavior, running is a behavior, matching letters. So anything that we can see someone do and we can count is a behavior. So the next slide is going over consequences. And again, these are events that follow a behavior in time. So we're going to put the same time kind of requirement on there, 3 to 5 seconds after the behavior, what was the immediate response from the environment? Consequences can affect behavior in 3 different ways. They can increase the behavior, they can decrease the behavior, or they can have no change on the behavior, no effect on the behavior. So when we look at our sheet here, our ABC data sheet, you'll see there's a spot at the top, like I said, for the behaviors. Locations, you can clarify, just kind of write in some preset locations of where you are with your kids normally. Activity is just a general idea of what they're doing at the time, and sometimes that gives us a little additional information. And then it goes the breakdown into different antecedents and different consequences. ABC data sheets can look differently, but for the most part, they're going to have the same list of antecedents and consequences. So let's just go through them real fast, just so you guys understand them. So an antecedent is what happened immediately before a behavior. We have the choices of you delivered an instruction. You denied a request. Your child asked for something, and you said, no, I'm sorry, you can't have that now. And then they engaged in a behavior. You removed a preferred item from them, and then they got upset. You approached a child or a student. So sometimes for some kids, just physical proximity of an adult or another person can set them off. So we have to look at, anything that can happen before. You walked away from the child. You were attending to other people. You weren't giving them attention. Maybe the student or child was alone. There was no interaction with them. Or maybe they were provoked by someone else. So those are pretty common antecedents that we use, that then when the data sheet is filled out, it helps us kind of pinpoint what the function could be. We always leave a blank spot or two for you to write in something very specific to your child's scenario. And then we would do the same thing for consequences. So what would happen after a behavior? Did you terminate your request? Did you deliver a preferred item or food? Did you give them something? Yeah. Did you just walk away from them? Maybe you redirected them. Did you say no or stop? Did you attend to the behavior? Did you try and block it physically? Or did you just do nothing? And again, a blank spot so that you can kind of customize it. And we see a lot of unique things in there, sometimes. And typically when we're doing an ABC assessment, we take data for about 2 weeks. Ideally, that gives us a really good picture when we look at this completed. And it's fairly easy to complete. Whenever there's a behavior, you would just put the date, the time, and your initial. And then we just ask that you check one behavior per column. So if a couple of behaviors happen at the same time, you would just check one in the first column and then go over to the second column and then the third column. And then you'd fill out the appropriate areas, locations, antecedent, and consequences. So once you have this data, then that gives you a really good picture as to understanding why your child's doing this. You'll start to see some patterns. Oh, notice that every time I walk away, before that is an antecedent, and then there's a behavior. And then basically, after the behavior, I attend to them. And so when you start to see these kind of patterns, you go, oh, maybe my attention is causing the behavior here. So that will help us to better define appropriate responses for the child to engage in order to get the same results from the problem. So, okay, we can forward. Thank you. So there's different types of consequences. We talked about consequences can increase behavior, decrease, or have no change at all. Things that can typically happen after a behavior. Something good can happen, so they can get access to something. Something is added to their environment. Something aversive can stop, like a baby crying, or, if you take aspirin, then your headache is gone. That's something bad that stopped. Something bad can happen. So if you're running, then you can trip and fall. And something good can stop. So if you have access to something and then someone takes my drink, and then that would make me upset, more upset. So those are different types of consequences. Okay, we can.
Oh,
Let me see.
it's typed.
Oh, yeah, I'm missing a page.
Oh,
So that's fine. No, you're fine. Keep that there.
very good.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's just out of order.
Ah, there you go.
Okay, so when we're looking at our ABC data sheet then, this provides a lot of useful information as well as antecedents and consequences, but also tracking time of day. You might start to see some types of patterns that, target behaviors tend to occur, between 9 and 12 in the morning, or maybe always, right before lunch at 11:45, there's some kind of disruption going on, This again is information that can help us. So these kinds of analysis track patterns and antecedents, patterns and consequences. It helps define the function of the behavior. And it can also give you some general idea about the frequency or how often the behavior is occurring. A sheet like this doesn't actually track like how many times your child might be hitting, but it gives you episodes. So you can see, well, 5 times this week there were episodes of hitting, And so then once we know the function of the behavior, we would stop this sheet and we would switch to a different sheet that would allow us to actually count the behavior in a more accurate way. And so all of this information is what we use to develop our intervention. So it is a little bit time consuming on the front end, but getting good behavior data on the ABC analysis is really what determines the plan. So it's worth it.
How long do we do this?
I would say at least 2 weeks. It depends. If the behaviors are really occurring at high rates and you're getting 2 sheets in one day, then probably one week could be enough. But typically we do it for about 2 weeks, and then we collect the sheets and we review them, and we get a really good, clear understanding of what's going on.
So if my concern is more what is happening in the classroom, then the teacher would be the one tracking it.
You would define the behaviors that you want to look at. Clearly, is it on-task behavior, or is it non-compliance, or and then she would have to, anytime that behavior occurred, what happened before and what happened after.
So your data will only be just as good as someone.
Exactly.
If somebody was keeping track or not, then
that
would also affect.
And that is, working in this field, whether you're working in schools or in homes or with staff in the community at community day programs. Accuracy of data is always a concern, but typically we do a lot of follow-up. So we'll go and we'll train staff on how to fill out the sheets, and then we'll check in a couple of days. Oh, how's the data going? Let me see. Okay, you need to do it for another week. I'm going to come back and check. And so, there is.
The teachers in the schools already know how to do this, or am I supposed to go and explain it?
No, not necessarily. Really, I'm just teaching you how to do it, and it could be more for your use at home. At this point, if you needed something done at the school, it'd be better to go through the referral process through the school, and then we would handle it on our end.
The referral?
For ABA services. So, but I think it might be possibly, challenging to get a classroom teacher, depending on the setting and the number of students and how much support they have, to fill out the data. If there's paraprofessionals in the room, sometimes they're really good to train and they can fill out the information for us. Okay, so let's see. If we could advance one, please.
How's that?
Good.
Good.
So now we're back to our question. Why does he do that? So we reviewed the data of our sheets, potentially, and then that leads us to, there's 4 main functions of behavior. And these are general categories that apply to everyone's behavior. Any living organism, responds under these same contingencies, and so when you're trying to figure out what your husband's doing, or your son, or your daughter, your coworker, you can use this on anybody. The four main functions or behavior are attention, escape or avoidance, tangible, so access to food or items or activities, and then sensory. So we'll go through those now and get a better understanding. Fix my pages. Okay.
Is the right one?
Yeah, perfect. So the first function we're going to review is the attention function. Basically, it's a social interaction. A closeness, possibly a look, a tickle, a smile. You know, I think when you are interacting with your kids, you know how you're attending to them and what they respond to. A lot of the times, attention is a function. For some kids, they just never get enough attention. You can seem like you're showering them for attention and they still want more. And, you know, if that's the function of the behavior, we do need to work around that. So, sorry?
How would you?
Well, I mean, initially you do have to attend to the good behavior, and then we find ways to teach the child to be more independent, and then you're able to kind of lessen your attention, or, you know, there's different procedures and processes that we would use. But a lot of the time when you're talking about changing behavior, especially severe problem behavior, it is very time and labor intensive on the people who are doing the work to change the behavior. And so, you know, sometimes we have to really decide to drop other things and let other things fall so we can give that positive attention, have the person learn the new replacement behaviors, and then we can slowly fade out to more normal amounts. But for attention, it's really important to understand that attention is not just what we term to be like positive attention. If you're scolding your child or yelling at them, thinking that that's a negative interaction, it potentially can be perceived as a positive interaction to them because it is still some form of attention. And so yelling, if a behavior is maintained by attention, yelling can actually cause an increase in that behavior, not a decrease. And parents typically yell because they want to decrease something.
Right.
So we have to, again, look at that when attention is a function. So try not to make any assumptions and really look at your data. If you see that this behavior occurs, I'm yelling, and then it occurs again, and I'm yelling, and then next day a couple more times, and I'm yelling, we know yelling is not effective at reducing. It might actually be reinforcing the behavior. Okay, next slide, please. So next function is escape or avoidance. A lot of kids engage in behaviors to stop a current activity or to avoid something from happening. They see the therapist coming with an armful of activities, and then they start engaging in target behaviors to get out of, away from doing that. Tangibles. Again, it's another very common function for problem behavior. Kids want access to things. They know what they want, they know what they like, and they will do whatever they can to get that. And so if engaging in problem behavior somehow gets people to give them things, then they've learned that to be an effective tool, and they'll continue to use it. Tantrums in like the grocery store is a really common example, even with toddlers. You know, they go in the aisle, you're checking out, they see the candy, they want the candy, you say no, not right now, and then they have this big tantrum, and then you're embarrassed because they're freaking out in the store, and you go, here, have some candy, you know. So they learn very fast, and they know how to use it against us.
It's true.
Yeah. So the next one is sensory. And the sensory function is a little bit harder to deal with, harder to treat. It's an internal sensation that the person receives in response to sensory input. So for behaviors like rocking or spinning, any kind of repetitive behavior, even head hitting or mouthing objects, when you're looking at changing that behavior, we have to find an alternative that is appropriate but still gives them that same input, right? So it does get a little bit harder. How do you find, you know, a replacement behavior for head hitting, right? So, but you know, there's lots of creative people out there, and you look in crazy catalogs and online, and maybe we find some kind of device that, you know, can give pressure on the head, you know, and every once in a while they get to wear this and then it provides pressure, or like a massaging type thing, you know, and so that might be. The other thing is, especially with sensory behaviors, we always want to look at and see, with any problem behavior, is there any kind of medical cause, any underlying medical problem? If a child is nonverbal and they're doing a lot of hitting here or hitting here, it could easily be a cavity or an ear infection that no one has looked at, and this behavior actually can cause some relief to them, you know? So when kids are very nonverbal, we want to make sure that we do, and we're looking at self-injurious behaviors or other behaviors that can cause harm, we want to make sure that the child is healthy and okay first, you know? So behaviors are a little bit harder to find replacements for under the sensory category, but like I said, especially these days, there are a lot of really cool options, and if you get creative, you can usually find something that can help. Okay, next. Thanks. So just a general question for the group. If two children engage in the same behavior, but they have different functions, should the behavior plans have the same procedures?
I guess we know.
Right, no. Yeah, because again, it's not based on, oh, Johnny hits and Julian hits. It's what is the function of hitting for Johnny and what is the function of hitting for Julian. We always address behavior by the function. So you'll find that some people can jump the gun and they make assumptions about why this person is doing something, and then they just throw in a procedure, and behavior analysts do not do that. So sometimes people who aren't as trained, or people who just have experience with people with disabilities and like day have centers, you might see that they do that. Oh, I think he's doing it for this, and they start their own procedure, not really understanding the full function, and they can actually be making the behavior worse. So like I said, it's a little bit intensive in the beginning, but worth it to get the proper data and get a true understanding of what is the function.
I'm sorry, I'm maybe went there.
Yeah.
What is BSP? Behavior?
Behavior support plan.
Okay.
It's a little abbreviation, I'm sorry. Okay, so now we can look at our chart, our next data sheet we have here. And this is an example of a data sheet, a frequency data sheet, that tracks the behaviors once we know the function. So once we know the function, we don't need to continuously find out what happened before and what happened after, because we've identified it's maintained by escape or it's maintained by attention. And we put in the proper procedures to address that. But it's very important to still track the target behaviors. You know, we need to know if our target behaviors are going down, and that tells us if our procedures are effective. So we would take the same target behaviors, and we would write them in the columns here on the left. And then this is an example of a data sheet that covers the whole week. It is nice because it's divided a little bit into time, and I always like to kind of keep track of time. I think that it's a useful variable when you're looking at behavior. And this just breaks the day into 3 8-hour blocks. So from midnight to 8 a.m., you know, if we see a lot of behaviors, we know maybe there's issues with getting up or something about the morning routine that we're seeing a lot of problems, right? The 8 to 4, is it something, you know, around a meal time or just transitioning from general activities, you know? Again, this is just one sample of a data sheet. There's lots of different styles and types, but this is a general easy tally data sheet, and you can even just tape it up on your wall at home, and as the target behaviors that you're tracking occur, you would just go under the day and time and just put a tally mark. And then at the end of the week, you can take this off, kind of just count up how many behaviors you had, and then we can put those on a graph. So What I do like about this one is at the bottom, for behaviors that are a little bit more serious, it has also some categories. What is the impact of this target behavior? So if the child has property destruction of the target behavior, we have a category here, how much actual property was broken or damaged. Or if tantrums is the behavior, but in the midst of the tantrum, things tend to get broken, that makes tantrums a little bit more serious than just flopping around on the floor and crying. So this again gives us kind of a measure of intensity. If aggression is the behavior or tantrums, you know, is the child getting hurt or other people getting hurt when they're trying to interact with them? So this can be useful information. Again, if you see that you're not really having to use these columns, you can take them off the data sheet or, you know, or just not fill them in. So we've kind of talked about the general understanding of a behavioral assessment and identifying the function. And now we're going to talk about picking replacement behaviors. Whenever we have a behavior that we want to decrease, we want to find an appropriate behavior to replace that with. So what can we teach the child to engage in instead of using the problem behavior to get access to the same things that they were getting from the problem behavior? So we know the function. If someone is engaging in tantrums to escape something, how can we give them appropriate behaviors to also escape something? Okay? So if we can advance one. Thank you. So replacement behaviors is an alternate or desirable behavior that is selected that will now receive the positive reinforcement. Most children who engage in problem behaviors do not have or do not use the most appropriate communication. So a lot of the times our interventions tend to be communication-based so that we can give the child a more appropriate way to request or stop things from happening. So when you're selecting, can you advance that? When you're selecting replacement behaviors, in order to see a decrease in the problem behavior, the replacement behavior must match the function of the problem behavior. And again, this is an area where sometimes people jump the gun and they say, oh, he's doing this, why don't we just have him do this? If they don't match the function, it's not going to really affect that behavior that we want to decrease. So it is important to really know the functions. And the replacement behavior should be capable of producing the reinforcer with relative ease. So one example is that a child hits their head to escape tasks that are coming. Here comes mom with some laundry that they're supposed to fold, or the teacher has some worksheets and they don't want to do it. And typically they've been hitting their head. And when people see that, they go, oh, okay, you don't have to do that. So the child has learned that hitting the head is an appropriate way of getting out of doing things. So we don't want the child to hit the head anymore. So we have to come up with an easy way for him to escape those activities. If you make it too hard, like if you want the child to, you know, sign 3 or 4 things or say, no, I don't feel like doing that right now, that might be too much effort for the child in the beginning. So they might resort back to hitting the head because hitting the head gets them that immediate escape. So it's important that it not only matches the function, but that it's relatively easy to get the reinforcement with the new behavior. So if we're coming at him with the laundry or the papers, we might want them to say, no, you know, or maybe just touch a picture of the word break or stop. Something very easy. And then we say, okay, you don't have to do it. And we do this repeatedly. We teach them through training that instead of hitting my head, I just have to touch this picture and all demands will go away.
But isn't ultimately so then what do you do to actually get them to do something that's important for them to do? Like do their homework and do all the laundry.
Right. You know, in the beginning, it's definitely a bargain. We have to put precedence on the importance of, safety and changing the behavior, and in the beginning, allowing that person to learn that the appropriate response gets them that break. And it is hard for a lot of people to understand, especially when it comes to escape. You know, they're like, oh, but they have to do this, and they should participate in that, and they're just going to sit there all day and do nothing. But that's what the person wants right now. And so as we teach them, slowly, we say, okay, you can have a break, and then maybe 5 minutes later, we come back with one shirt instead of a whole armful of laundry, and we say, oh, can you help me fold it? Let's do it, and we do it together, and we say, okay, you're done, and then we give them a break again, you know. And we slowly build up over time, so that, again, the child is participating in the day, doing activities of homework and chores and social and, you know, whatever they need to do. But in the beginning, when, especially for behaviors that are really ingrained with the escape behavior, it's a compromise on the team to agree that the focus is on teaching the replacement behavior right now. So giving them multiple opportunities throughout the day to actually escape and have that break that they want. And then, of course, we slowly build up so that they are working. And sometimes it doesn't actually take that long to get back to, you know, doing a whole worksheet or folding a bin of laundry or something like that. So, but it needs to be a balance, and that person needs to feel like they have some control. And a lot of it is what it comes down to, that they need to be able to communicate their choices and when they want to do something. And then we have other procedures as well that we can use. So we can say, we got them to hit their head, he asked for a break, he gets a 2-minute break, and then we say, okay, first fold the shirt, and then you can play this game. Or first, you know, do this math problem, and then you can watch a video on YouTube. And then you do another math problem, and then you get another video. You know, so then we can use the pre-math principle and other types of things to increase our work behaviors. Yeah. So again, a lot of effort and work, but the goal is teaching this person appropriate communication and their learning. So, okay, so next slide, please. I think we probably already covered this, but you know, you must ensure that the replacement behavior will be reinforced with a high level of probability. Otherwise, the child will resort back to the problem behavior. So it is important to talk to the team and to make sure that everybody is going to be on the same page. You don't want grandma going, no, I want him to fold those shirts, and you know, and then interfering with the procedure that will sabotage the intervention. You know, especially if you're talking about, for example, withholding, you know, your attention for a negative behavior, we want to stop attending to it. We have to make sure that everybody is going to ignore that behavior. There's nothing worse than running an intervention and the behaviors that we want to decrease. If they contact reinforcement somehow for the old ways, it makes it harder for the new ways to stick and for them to learn. So it's kind of like that gambling philosophy. You know, sometimes I pull, I get a payout, sometimes I don't. But when you don't, that makes you, well, I got it last time, so let me try a couple more times. And so that intermittent reinforcement actually strengthens behavior over time. And so when we're changing or decreasing behavior, we really want it much more clear. Reinforcement for the new behaviors and no reinforcement for the problem behaviors. We don't want that kind of intermittent in there for the problem behaviors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's a little example of some behaviors on the left column. And then in the middle column, it's telling us what the function of that behavior is. And then I thought we can just talk about what might be an appropriate replacement behavior given that function. And so this will get us thinking along the lines of maybe when you're understanding the function of your kid's behavior, what might be an appropriate replacement. So if we have hitting for the escape function, so they're using hitting to get out of doing things. What would an appropriate behavior be to teach someone to get out of doing things or to escape activities? And let's just say that they have like moderate verbal skills. They're not super verbal, but they have, you know, a little bit of verbal skills that they can say 1 or 2 word phrases and things like that.
I would say, just like I was saying, you know, okay, you don't have to do it now, or you can do a little now, and then you can do X, Y, and Z.
Right,
Just
but
go
that,
forward.
we want to teach the child something that they can engage in. So
Right.
they have learned that hitting gets me out of doing something. So now, what can the child do to get out of doing
So
something?
I'm thinking that hitting is physical, is contact. So could you ask them to stomp or do that so that they still get the same, but they're not hitting another person?
Okay, I mean, that's one option.
Or is that still too close to hitting?
It could be considered, you know, you want to look at how appropriate is the replacement behavior. And
Right.
ideally,
You don't want another inappropriate behavior.
right, I mean, that's a less inappropriate behavior.
Right,
But, you know,
but
and then
still-
if the child has some kind of sensory needs, then we can address those as well, you know. But I think here we're looking at like a communication response, whether it's verbal, a gesture, or even a picture, that could get them the proper escape, right?
Shake their head.
Yeah, they could just say no. They could say break, or they could touch the picture of break, or they could shake their head no, or they can sign, you know, no work, something like that. And then you would say, okay, continue to break, no work. So again, you want to teach them something that will allow them to escape so they don't have to hit. And typically it does. It comes down to what type of communication response can we teach. Because the kids have learned these problem behaviors, they're using them to communicate, right? Sometimes the kids have the words, but they just don't use them. They've learned that hitting or tantruming is more effective than using their words. So then we have to reteach them, no, your words are valuable here. We want you to use your words. And if you're nonverbal, then we can teach you to sign, gesture, or use pictures. But anything that is more appropriate. And so for escape maintain behaviors, a lot of the time it is about teaching the child a way to communicate that they want to break or that they want to stop something. And so that becomes the primary focus. What is appropriate for this kid's level for that type of communication, you know? Okay, so for tantrums, the child is tantruming to access toys. You go in the store and they want toys and they throw a tantrum and they're crying and screaming. What can you teach them instead of tantruming?
I'd like the answer to that. Or you could tell them no, they can't have it, but.
No, but that's your response, right? So we need to teach the child something. What do you want the child to do instead of tantruming?
They could ask for it.
Yeah,
One way or
right.
another, doesn't mean they're gonna do it.
Right,
But-
exactly, right. So, you know, we might have to, in the beginning, you know, keep the kid away from that situation until he learns that asking, okay, no, I'm not getting it this time. Sometimes we do a visual before we go in the store. We say, okay, we're going in the store, but look, no toy today, so that they know. Then they go in and they ask, and you say, look, I showed you, no toy, right? But that's communicating to them so that they understand. But we still want them to be able to communicate to us so that they don't have a tantrum as well. So if they, you know, maybe make the request for the toy, then we could say, nope, sorry, not today. Or maybe you agree that if you go, you only take him in the dollar store and while you're working on this behavior, so that if he does ask for something, yeah, you used your words nicely, let's get one toy, and then he gets $1 toy, and then we leave, you know, and then a couple days later you take him back, he asks for toy, okay, you get one toy, and then he leaves. So initially we're teaching, if I use my words, I get the toy. Once you have that behavior more consistent, then you can introduce, okay, I use my words, but I'm not getting a toy this time, you know? So that sometimes you get a toy and sometimes you don't, and then he's more likely to understand because he's had some exposure. So all of these teaching replacement behaviors take a lot of time and effort, but they do work, and in the end, the goal is to...
Mark it up out here, so just go out that door, close up that way.
Thank you. In the end, it's worth it because the child is learning appropriate ways to communicate and no longer has to engage in problem behavior to get what they want. So let's jump down to the sensory one, climbing on furniture and jumping. And the kid is doing that. I saw that last week in class. The kid was running around, no shoes on, climbing on anything he could find and jumping to get like this input. So what would be an appropriate replacement for a sensory type behavior like that? We want to give him some kind of input on his feet where he's jumping, but not climbing on things. So what else could he jump on?
Trampoline.
Yeah.
Have an area in the classroom. I mean, I know that my son, he used to have a basket of balls, different textures that he could hold and touch.
Yeah.
But for the feet, I guess it would have to be maybe a mat.
Yeah, a trampoline or a mat.
Pillows and, I guess, different textures for the feet as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these you do have to experiment with, but the idea is that once you know what the function is, then you want to find something as close as possible that is an appropriate way to get that. So we can teach them climbing and jumping is not appropriate, but walking over to the trampoline and jumping, and maybe just jumping off from the trampoline at a lower level, or just jumping on the floor with no shoes to get that hard input, could maybe be an appropriate replacement. So sometimes there is some practice and kind of experimenting on our end to see what is really going to work for this child, Next slide. Thank you. So does that kind of make it more clear about how to pick a replacement behavior?
Yes.
Okay, so you always want to see what would match the function and what is at the appropriate level for your child. And they can still get that same kind of input. So now when you're talking about teaching the replacement behaviors, like I mentioned before, you want to set up a lot of opportunities so that they can, are able to access reinforcement with the new behaviors. So we're going to set aside times of the day to really practice this. If it's requesting with a picture, we might sit them down and have the picture and the item that they want, and if they touch the picture or hand us the picture, we immediately give them the item. And so they're getting these repeated practice with, oh, I don't have to hit my head to get this, I just have to give them the picture. Then if that's the case, you want to make sure that the picture is available around the house. There might be a couple of copies so that whenever the kid wants it, he knows where to get the picture. It's easy for him to find and get the picture. If you make it too difficult, then again, he's going to resort back to the problem behavior. So the important part now is that we attend to the shift in behavior. We now want to make sure that the positive behaviors are getting reinforced for the individual, and the problem behaviors are no longer coming into contact with reinforcement. So, I think when you're doing this at home, it is a lot harder because you're in a less structured environment. You have so many things going on in daily life and other kids and dinner and snacks and work. But if you're committed to changing, it's important maybe just to pick one behavior at a time, something that you've really, agreed as a family to focus on and put your effort in, and then you'll see your hard work. You'll see results a lot faster if you do that. And then once you have that behavior under control, you can then focus on another behavior. Okay, so it's important to be consistent. Like I said, get everyone, next slide. Be consistent, get everyone on the same page, and then continue to use the data collection. You will start to see at the beginning of your teaching procedures for replacement behaviors that you're still seeing a lot of your problem behaviors occurring because the child hasn't really learned that the new behaviors are a more effective way to get reinforcement. But as the child learns that, you're going to see your target behavior data go down, less and less frequency, which is our goal. So a lot of the times we have staff take data on both the target behavior and the replacement behavior. And the graphs can be really nice because as hitting goes down and requesting goes up, you actually see hitting really high, requesting low, and then they're slowly approaching, they get to the point where they cross, and then hitting kind of drops down to 0 and requesting is up to 100, and then that's the process of decreasing a problem behavior. So as the behavior analyst, we like to see that. The data and the graph is very exciting for us, but it's also a good visual for you guys, and anyone can kind of plot a little graph, make 1 to 10 or 10 to 100% on the side, and just kind of track it or do it on the computer. It's good feedback for everybody in the family or the staff to see that all their efforts have been successful and the child has learned a new behavior. And then you get to see over time, like, wow, I just changed that behavior and it was such a problem for us, and now they're not doing this anymore. Quality of life improves, and you're ready to tackle the next behavior. And so it can be a lengthy process, but it can also be very rewarding for the family and the teachers. Okay, so that is it for decreasing problem behaviors. Do you guys have any questions?
Pause.
Likes to run.
Likes to run.
He likes to run.
Run away or run?
Run away.
Okay.
He doesn't like to walk with me or whoever he's with. He likes to run away. Where would that fall?
Okay, so that falls under elopement,
Okay.
and that's on our list there.
I saw that.
And so when we're talking about elopement, it is, I would say, typically maintained by attention. I don't want to say that. Okay, it can be maintained by anything, right? But a lot of cases I've seen are the child likes that chase of people coming after them, and so it does make it hard to decrease when you're worried about their safety, right? You don't want to just let them run ahead of you.
Right.
But if it's more of like an escape maintained behavior, like they don't like a certain activity and then they're just leaving the area, that's different. But in this case, what is he doing?
Like as soon as we get outside.
He likes to run. So what we've done sometimes for that, I mean, of course, I would take the data. You walk outside, that can be the antecedent, running is the behavior, what happens after, how long do you have to chase him? Are you guys being really verbal, like, hey, come back, you're going to get hurt, or you're going to get in trouble, you're not going to get this, or are you trying to entice him with something, hey, come back and I'll give you some ice cream, or, look clearly at what's happening before and after, and that will give you a better picture. But sometimes what we do is, if it's just they like the feeling of running, we take them to the gym or to the track and we say, okay, let's run. So we try to make that behavior more functional and then give them opportunities to run like appropriately, so that when it's time to walk, then, so maybe what you can do is, does he like to run really fast, or could he run?
Yeah, he's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Was it like a contract? Let's walk right now, and then later I'll take someplace to run?
Yeah, but
that's too long.
It could be too
It's
long.
hold
So
on to.
if anything, you might want to find some peers that can run with the child and you can kind of monitor. And so you go together and you say, okay, we're going to run, and maybe you make a game out of it. Sometimes it's better to try and get the behaviors under stimulus control than so much of, being able to just always replace it. So now we say, okay, you want to run? Okay, I'm going to set the watch, let's run. And we run for 1 minute, and then we say, okay, stop. And then we get him to stop. We say, okay, now it's time to run. Click, and then we run, and then we stop. And so you're teaching him to kind of run, but on your command, instead of just running away from you. And then you can say, okay, now it's time to walk, and then slowly walk, and then, okay, let's run. So, but again, whenever it's a behavior like that there are safety concerns, you want to make sure that you're in a safe area, that there aren't cars around, that,
Right.
So,
I mean, he gets plenty of exercise, and I run with him. You know, we do try to make a game out of it. My thing is, like, as soon as we get out the door, I have to hold on to him.
Otherwise he'll bolt.
Otherwise he'll take off.
Yeah. So the other thing too you can do is you can reinforce staying with you. So,
It works once every month.
yeah,
Lots of
well,
plumbing.
and
Lots of
that's the
plumbing.
thing, is that you have to find out an effective reinforcer. When people say it works once in a while, it usually means that we haven't found a really powerful reinforcer. So maybe running away is more powerful than, you know, what you can find right now. But if you can find something new, something that he would really like, that is small and portable that you could use in that kind of setting, that you only give to him when he stays and he's, you know, standing with you, you know? And so then you practice like stepping outside and then staying together. Okay, stay with mom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. And then he gets this. And then you can take it and say, okay, now let's go for a run. And then we run together. And then we come back. And then we say, okay, now stay with mom. And then 1, 2, 3. You know, you might have to start with just 1, 2, and then reinforce it 2 seconds, you know. Depends on how long you get an idea of how long he'll actually stay with you before he runs, you know. So, it could be a shaping procedure that we want to shape staying with you in conjunction with, getting running under control so that he runs when we say it's time to run, or that he's got to ask to run before he runs away. But again, you still have to know the function of why he's running so that you can put in the appropriate package of procedures. Yeah.
He's just always doing that.
No, but if you take the data on it, it will show you something. If you take data for a week, every time you step outside, is it something,
I mean, there's nothing out of the ordinary happening. We go outside. I mean, there's nothing.
Okay, but then what happens after he runs?
I'll call him dead and wait for mommy. Sometimes he'll stop. Sometimes he won't. I'll have to chase him.
Okay.
And grab him. And usually I'm like grabbing the back of his shirt.
Yeah,
because
right.
he's so fast. And then, we either get in the car or whatever we're doing. And, I'll scold him maybe. And, you're not supposed to do that. You just didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I try to teach him about the street. Looking for a place to play cars and things.
Yeah.
Walk out.
How old is he?
He's 7.
Okay.
This may be way off, but, because I don't know. But, would it be okay to, instead of running after him and that whole thing of being scared for his safety, would it be okay to put, some sort of like, those, you see babies with the harness that say, I'm gonna do this because
I used
you
that
might.
when he was younger.
So I will
He
take
doesn't
it
like
away.
it, and I don't want
Right,
to force it on him. That's why I'm always holding on to him.
Right,
to him.
right.
So I was gonna say, I'll take it away.
Well, that kind of impulsive, again, in extreme cases for safety, that could be an option,
I mean, when we're
but,
going to like large outdoor functions like Halloween, we go to the World Trade Center for the party, and there's like a million people out there.
Yeah.
I'll throw something like that on him. For things like that, but just in general, everyday use,
Yeah. No, it is something that can be taught. A lot of kids that age can be really impulsive anyway, and there is, again, I would still, look at, are you specifically consistently giving him some kind of, what is reinforcing that behavior? If it's just the fact that, I get outside and then I want to go, it could be that's an internal thing that we need to deal with. So how do we give him the opportunity to do that, maybe, again, it's really hard to say without seeing the data or without seeing the behavior.
But can it be applied?
But it can definitely be taught and it can be changed so that he learns to stand with you and not run and things like that. It's just, we have to do the assessment on it.
What you're saying is that it could be an internal thing, and could maybe be applied to internal things like that?
Well, it becomes more of a sensory thing. Like, he likes the feeling of bolting and running away, that kind of rush that you get when you're running really fast. So it does make it a little bit harder to find a replacement for that kind of runner's high that you get, you know? I mean, those kind of things happen as well for like head banging. Sometimes head banging is maintained because the kids get this rush of endorphins from the pain. And so how do you replace that? What's appropriate that you can, you know? But, you know, it also, you know, becomes a behavioral thing when the kids are running. You know, again, it's about learning to wait and being still and standing in line. And I'm sure if he's doing it with you, he's probably doing it at school.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, it's worth it across the board to, you know, maybe have them do the analysis at school as well. And then together you guys are using the same procedure. Whenever you're both on the same page, you're going to see change occur a lot faster. So I think that will conclude for tonight's problem behavior session. Thank you for coming. Sorry about the date change at the last minute, but this is February, so March is on schedule.
What day, March? Remember?
I don't have the flyer even, but the April date was changed. So I believe it is the 24th instead of the 26th.